Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. In the days leading up to Rosh Hashana, which is gearing up to be quite a different one for all of us. So we're going to try and do a bit of preparation to have us ready, prepared, and confident to run our own little service, wherever we may be. Little in one way, but big in another way. It's little because there'll be less people in the room than at usual services, but big because we're really all together doing this. We're doing this in our own homes, but we're doing it with a united heart and spirit. And the cooperation between communities and between families and individuals is like never before. And the sense of, I guess, communal responsibility and oneness is really unique and a big gift. One of the many gifts that have come out of this trying and difficult time in the world. And so I, as a rabbi, have run Rosh Hashana services before, but not at home. But most people haven't run them before. And so you have no choice. You have to. This year, you have to do it. And no one's going to run it for you. You have to do it yourself. And so to make it for yourself and for anyone who may be sharing your experience, to make it something powerful, something meaningful, something memorable, is not out of our reach. It's very within our reach, but we need a bit of help, and the help is there. So what I want to look at tonight is a little bit of a structure, a bit of an approach, and what assistance there is out there to make your Rosh Hashanah davening, the prayer service at home, something meaningful and powerful. And I'm going to focus on the daytime prayers, even though there's evening prayers, afternoon prayers, but I'm going to focus on the morning prayer, which is the time that most people would attend shul. And so hopefully most people will be making their shul at home. So I'm sharing my screen now, so you can see as we go through everything that I say, apart from that's being recorded. I can share with you everything that there is. You can take notes as well, but I'll share with you this presentation if you'd like afterwards, so you'll be able to remember it all. So this year, you are the chazan leading the prayers. You are the rabbi giving the sermon. You're the kids counselor if there are kids in the house, looking after the kids and making sure that they are having an experience. You're also the janitor who has to set all this up, clean up afterwards, and make sure that it's all done correctly. You have all of these roles and many other roles that you have to take up. And so hopefully this evening I'll help you with all of those roles of what you need to do. A couple of things to prepare, and this is what we're going to go through. You're going to need a machzor, a prayer book, the Yom Tov prayer book, and we'll see the various ones that are available and what you'll choose what is appropriate for you. But to have the service, you do need a prayer book. You're also going to need reading materials, because you're not just the chazan leading the service, you're also the rabbi giving the inspiration for the service. And this is even if you're sitting all on your own, it is still an experience that you want to do, that you want to make as meaningful, as powerful, and as inspiring as possible. And so you being the rabbi, you have to try and make it the most interesting possible. And you can only do that if you're prepared. If you, in advance, find good reading materials to read on the day, and also read stuff in advance to know what you're planning to do on the day. We're going to go through each of these in detail. The shofar blowing. You're going to have to prepare a shofar blowing. The shofar is the most important part of the day of Rosh Hashanah. And so you're going to need to organize that. A kids service, if there are children in the house, they need to have an experience as well. So you're going to have to work on that to have a nice kids program. And a timetable for the day. You need to know exactly what you're doing when, to be well prepared and to not just land on the day of Rosh Hashanah, but to go into it with a schedule, which usually there's an automatic schedule. There's the time that shul begins, there's the time that the shofar blowing is, there's a time that lunch begins. But of course, now we're in this sort of blurred schedule, all of us, where days run into each other and we don't really necessarily know the difference between one or the other. We can't do that on Rosh Hashanah. We have to have a schedule. And we have to have a prayer space. We don't have a shul to go to, but we have to create in our home a space that this is the shul. This is where we're davening. This is where it's happening. So these are the points that we're going to go through to try and make this very doable, accessible, and realistic for all of us to be able to play all of these roles and have all of these needs prepared and ready for Rosh Hashanah. Part one. The first thing we have to decide is, how much are you going to pray? Remember, you are the chazan, you're leading the service, but you're calling the shots. How much of it are you going to do? In normal years, the decision is how long are you going to be in shul? Some people come to shul from start time or even earlier until end time, and they sit in shul the entire duration of the prayers without taking a break, and they're inside for the entire experience, following along, saying every single prayer. Others will come for a bit of the prayer, for an hour or so, and that will be enough for them. And some just come for the absolute highlights, the blowing of the shofar. How much are you going to pray this year? It doesn't necessarily have to fit into what you've done in previous years. Maybe this year you're going to do more than you usually did, and maybe less. I would like to think, let's try and do a bit more, if possible, to grow, because you're running the service. It'll end up being shorter anyway. The service will not be as long as it is in shul for several reasons, which we'll see. But you have to think, how realistic is it for you? How much are you going to be praying on the day of Rosh Hashanah? And to understand how to make this choice, we need to understand really what the essence of Rosh Hashanah is. If we break it down to its very core essence, what are we supposed to achieve on Rosh Hashanah? What's supposed to happen to us on Rosh Hashanah? What are we supposed to feel and focus on? The answer is that Rosh Hashanah is the day when we proclaim God as King. We accept God's authority over us in our lives. We renew our bond with Him, our commitment to Him, our commitment to living a divine life, a good life, a meaningful life. This is what Rosh Hashanah is about. The blowing of the shofar is a coronation, is a celebration of God being King, is us calling from the depths of our soul to the depths of heaven, saying that we want you to be our King, God. It's renewing creation. This is really what Rosh Hashanah is about. This is what the essence of Rosh Hashanah is about. This is what all the prayers are about and the shofar is about. It's all about making God as King. Notice we do not speak about sins on Rosh Hashanah. That's Yom Kippur, we deal with the sins. On Rosh Hashanah, we don't ask for forgiveness. That's not the focus of Rosh Hashanah. The focus is committing ourselves, saying that we are in the relationship with God. We want to renew that relationship. We want to accept Him as King. This is really the essence of the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. And so we should be going into Rosh Hashanah saying, that's what I want to achieve. I want to have a moment where I feel that renewal, that sense of renewal of my divine bond, the bond between my soul and the creator of my soul, the source of my soul, God. And so the prayer service every year is to try and achieve that, is to try and achieve that sense of renewal and reconnection. You are going to need to do this at home and create that atmosphere, create that feeling, that sense. And so the question is, how are you going to do it? So there are a few options here. I've called this the bare minimum. The bare minimum option is that for the prayers on Rosh Hashanah morning, the absolute bare minimum would be to say the Shema, the most important prayer of all prayers, and to hear the shofar. If you do those two things, you've done something on Rosh Hashanah. And this is to acknowledge that for some people, that is about as much as they can commit to. For whatever reason, at some people in their spiritual state or their circumstances, a 15-minute little break in the day to say Shema and hear the shofar is about all that they can do. And if that's true, if that's where you're at, so great. That's wonderful. Do it. Make sure you do it. But make sure that 15 minutes is a real accepting the yoke of heaven on yourself, accepting God's presence on yourself. If you actually look at the Shema prayer, the Shema is exactly the same as what Rosh Hashanah is. The Shema is saying that God is my king. Shema Yisrael, Hero Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. We're accepting God as king, and we're speaking about the love of God and his commandments. That's exactly what the Shema is about. And in fact, the sages say that is every day we have a mini Rosh Hashanah in our morning prayers. When you say the Shema in the morning, you're accepting God as king for that day. That's what the Shema is. On Rosh Hashanah, it takes a deeper, more powerful meaning because it's for the entire year. And so if all you can do is say the Shema and hear the shofar, that is the bare minimum of an experience of Rosh Hashanah morning. I would hope that most people will be able to do a bit more than that, to go a step above that 15-minute experience. And that is to extend not just to do the Shema and the shofar, but also to do the Amidah, the silent prayer, to do Avinu Malkeinu, the prayer, our Father, our King, which is a particular powerful prayer for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and perhaps also to recite some of the highlights of the Machzor, of the complete prayer of Rosh Hashanah. That if you can do a little bit more than just the Shema, that would be the next stage up, the next level up. This might take 45 minutes instead of 15 minutes. It takes a bit more time, a bit more reading, a bit more contemplation. But that would be the next stage up from the bare minimum, which is that little green circle of the Shema and the Shofar. In addition to that, the Amidah, Avinu Malkeinu, and Machzor highlights. And then going all the way means saying the whole Machzor, which still this year would mean excluding the communal sections. Many parts of the Machzor are only said in a community. So it still would be less than a usual service. I've allowed here 2 hours for that, which is, I think, enough for reading at a normal pace to recite the entire prayer service for Rosh Hashanah on the morning. Now, where you want to fit in these 3 circles, the minimal, the medium, the step above, or all the way. Of course, there are shades in between, but these are the 3 basic levels. So whichever one you want to do, there is material for you. The books you need for whatever level you're going to do. If you're starting right at the bottom, the Shema and the Shofar, the basic level, so then there is the Home Shul Companion, which is a booklet that is coming out. It's been compiled by several rabbis from around the community here in Sydney. And it will have all you need to do that, to say the Shema and to hear the Shofar and to have a meditative, powerful experience. This booklet will have all you need for that. The booklet that's coming out, I can't show it to you yet because it hasn't actually been printed, but it's in the next day or so it will be. It will have in it 3 levels of experience. And so the booklet is good for everybody. And at whatever level you're on, you should make sure that this Home Shul Companion is a part of your experience. It has meditations and contemplations for somebody who's just wanting a basic experience. It has further readings on the prayers for those who want to go a little bit higher than that. And then it has also some in-depth analysis and deeper ideas on the prayers for those who are looking for a even more deeper experience. So all 3 levels will be helped by the Home Shul Companion. But for the first level, that's all you really need. It'll have the instructions there of what you need to do. For those who want to go to the next level, the blue level on our little chart here. So you'll need more than just the Home Shul Companion. You'll need that, but also you'll need a siddur, a normal siddur, normal year-round siddur, and the abridged Machzor. The abridged Machzor is something that has come out. Chabad put it out last year, and it's a Machzor, as the name implies. It's abridged. It's got the highlights, the main, most important prayers. It doesn't have the entire Machzor, but it has the main ones. You need to use that in conjunction with a siddur, because it doesn't have all the blessings in the entire service. It just has the additions for Rosh Hashanah. And so somebody who is somebody who, let's say if you're a person who does pray on a daily basis, or you go to shul on a regular basis on Shabbos, so you're used to saying the morning blessings and doing the service, you would need a siddur, and the abridged Machzor would fill in the Rosh Hashanah gaps to add. And of course, if you want to do the whole machzor, you need a whole machzor, which is the complete machzor. You need to have an actual machzor to use. Now, all of these can be provided for you. If you do not have a machzor, even though I do recommend buying one, it's a great idea to buy one, to have one, but because we use it once a year, and certainly in our shul, it's provided for everybody. So some people don't choose to buy a machzor. So if you want, we will provide the possibility of borrowing a machzor for this Yom Tov, one of the shul machzorim. So if you want to do the complete service, we will provide the machzor for you. If you don't have a siddur, that you really should have, everyone should have a siddur in their homes. I guess we could also lend somebody a siddur, but being a siddur is an everyday thing. It's really important to have one in the house. And so I would suggest, if you don't have one and you want to do the middle level, to buy a siddur this year. The abridged machzor we will provide. We are printing abridged machzorim, and we will be delivering them or offering them to be picked up. And so in the coming days, you'll hear about that. And the home shul companion, everyone will get as well. So looking at where you fit and which one you feel you're ready for, or you're ready to challenge yourself to do, based on that, you need to know what books you need to have prepared. Now, to understand that the Rosh Hashanah prayers are really just an expansion, an exaggeration, a magnification of the regular prayers. The regular prayer service on a daily basis is to say the Shema and the Amidah, the silent prayer. There are prayers that come before that as preparation for the Shema. After that, after the Shema, then around the Amidah, and after the Amidah, there's extra prayers that are built around the Shema and the Amidah. That's the main structure of every prayer service. On Rosh Hashanah, we just add more. So the Shema is the same Shema. The Amidah is a different Amidah, specifically for Rosh Hashanah. We say a second Amidah for Musaf, the additional prayer after the morning prayer. And there's prayers in between. In a communal setting, when we go to shul, so there are parts of prayer that are silent or personal, and there are parts of prayer that are communal and said out loud by the chazan, or responsive by the community and the chazan. Now, most of that will not be said if you don't have a minyan, if you don't have 10 men praying together. So there's much of that is skipped out. There's no repetition that we usually do out loud of the silent Amidah. However, some of the prayers that are said during that repetition are additional prayers called piyutim, religious poetry, beautiful, complicated prayers. And some of those can be said when you're alone, when you're not with a minyan. And so there is a guide to that, to which prayers are said alone and which not, which I'll also make available for those who are interested to know, what do I say if I'm doing the whole machzor, but I don't know what is skipped, what is only said in a community and what isn't. There's a guide for that as well. And so the idea of all prayer is the connection, the feeling of connection, and it's not an exercise in Hebrew reading practice. Or trying to read as fast as possible. It's to connect to the words you're saying. And so the Hebrew is quite difficult. All of these machzorim that I'm mentioning here do have English by their side. And so it's important to read the English and to understand what you're saying, to connect with what you're saying. It's better, our sages tell us, it's better to say less with more intention and more focus than more that's too much and you can't really focus on what you're saying. And so you can aim high, but do it in a way that will be realistic and that you'll be capable of following and making it meaningful. So they are the books that you will need, that will all be provided as per your needs. Let's go to the next section now. Reading materials. Remember, you're the rabbi, so it's not enough for you to just do the prayers. You also need to have reading materials ready. And that is to bring the inspiration part to the service. There's the prayer part, the connecting to God, but there's also the reflecting, the inspiration, the message of the day. And you need to bring that message. I'm not going to be there for you to do it. You have to do it yourself. So I'll share with you sermon resources. Where do rabbis get their sermons from? All different places. Not all rabbis get from the same place, and not any rabbi gets from the same place each time either. But if you want resources that are good for you, so I would say there's 3 places you need to go look at. You need to look online, you need to look on your bookshelf, and you also need to buy a new book. So online, I've just given 2 of the biggest and most famous websites, Jewish websites, Chabad.org and Aish.com. Both of them have a huge amount of fantastic, inspiring content, constantly new stuff. And so you could certainly go in the coming days before Rosh Hashanah, go onto those websites and print out a couple of articles, a few things that grab your eye that you can either save for the day or read in advance to think about on the day, but certainly to have something to read on the day as your sermon, as the thing that you're talking to yourself, but you're looking at it and contemplating. That would be a great way to do it. The other thing is to look at that Torah book that you got years ago, but never got around to reading. It's on your bookshelf. You've always wanted to look at it, but you've never actually looked at it. This would be a great time to look at it. Look at that Torah book and study it. Find something in there that was new. And in addition to that, or instead of that, buy an authentic Torah book. Go on the chaibooks.org.au is an Australian website centered in Melbourne, where you can order books and they ship within a couple of days. Or you can go to Amazon as well. There's plenty of Jewish books on Amazon. And if you want recommendations, personal recommendations, I can give, depending on what you're looking for. But there are fantastic, wonderful English language books written well that can give you a huge amount of inspiration. So because we've got extra time on Rosh Hashanah, we've got more time than we would usually have. I think it's a great time to try and delve into a book and really read. The fact that on Yom Tov we don't use the computer and we have to read a physical book or at least something printed out beforehand means that we're not flicking from one thing to another. We're focusing on one thing and really going in deep. And I think that's a very powerful way of doing it. That's your sermon. That's going to be your sermon. Either something you've printed out, a book that's on your shelf, or a book that you buy, a new, fresh Torah book that's going to be your inspiration for the day. We'll have time for questions also at the end, so we'll come back to everything. But part 3 is shofar blowing. Now, shofar blowing is the most important part of the entire day of Rosh Hashanah. This is the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, and it cannot be missed. So this needs to be made as a very important priority for the day. Now, the options of blowing the shofar, we don't yet exactly know. We're hoping to have shofar blowings in various locations, but as of today, which is just under 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, we do not know what here in Sydney is going to be legal and allowed as far as public shofar blowings. Certainly gatherings are not, by all accounts, they don't look like they're going to be allowed, but there is a discussion of some type of public shofar blowings that people can walk by while they're doing their daily exercise or their morning walk, can walk by and hear the sound of the shofar. In some description, that will be available. We just don't know exactly how yet, but there will definitely be shofar blowings happening in our town, however it's going to happen. The other option is to do it yourself. You can blow the shofar yourself. Anyone can blow the shofar and anyone can do it. It's not as easy as it looks. It's not as easy as a trumpet or a flute either. It's a difficult instrument to just physically get the noise out of. And also there are quite specific laws of blowing the shofar. So I would not recommend blowing the shofar yourself if you have availability to hear the shofar locally by somebody else. If you don't have that opportunity, so then you got to do it yourself, and you'll be able to do it yourself. To get a shofar, you can buy one. The Chabad Youth here in Sydney has shofars that they are distributing. So you can go online to coin.org.au/shofar21, and you can order a shofar to be delivered to you, and you will get it before Rosh Hashanah. If you do that quick, do that now. And you can learn the laws of blowing the shofar, the exact laws of how to do it, what noises have to be made, how long the noises have to go, how many breaths you have to take in between. There are specific laws. It's not just going and blowing and seeing what comes out. So you can learn those laws on Chabad.org. There are video instructions. So definitely, if that's going to be your option, get to work now to make sure you have a shofar and that you have the instructions on how to do it. We are going to have a full class on this next week. Rabbi Safran will be dealing with the details of shofar and the meaning and the laws much more. So we won't go into it more than that. And also, hopefully, next week, this time next week, Wednesday, when Rabbi Safran gives his class on shofar, by then, hopefully, we will know what the situation is, what we are allowed to do, and how we're going to be blowing the shofar. But rest assured, shofar will be blown. part 4 is the kids service. If you do have children in your home, so the question is, how will they remember this Yom Tov? It's going to be different for them as well. Is this going to be just another day at home? Is it going to be an annoying day because they are not allowed to do other things? Or is it going to be something that itself is memorable, is enjoyable, is something that they can take for their lifetime with? So you need to make a kids program. The kids have to be occupied and happy and involved and connected to the day. So I would say there's 2 times here. There's while you're praying. At that time, the kids need to be occupied with something else. You need to try and set aside a time that you can pray and the kids are doing something else. So for that, you need to have some fun, Yom Tov friendly activities prepared, not screens. Thank God that there's some days where screens are just not allowed. Other activities, Yom Tov friendly games and creative things. Some of them can be educational, some of them can just be fun, but Yom Tov friendly meaning not any electronics, just doing little games like they usually do, but something that you prepare in advance. That's for while you're praying. If you're in a family situation where there are several adults, if a father and a mother at the home, so it could be that one of you prays while the kids are doing and the other one is looking after the kids. Then you switch roles. You may not be able to pray together, and if that's the case, that's the case. Each of you have to take your time, whether it be your 15-minute, your 45-minute, or your 2-hour slot of prayer, and the other one can do the kids program and do activities with the kids. And praying with them is important. That they should have a prayer experience as well on the day of Rosh Hashanah that's appropriate to them, depending on their age and what they're capable of doing and how familiar they are with the prayers. Nefesh will be providing both Yom Tov friendly activity for kids, as well as a kids machzor, a little aim for little kids to have a little prayer experience for Rosh Hashanah. They'll be a part of the Nefesh packages that we will be providing for you for Rosh Hashanah, which details again will be coming out very soon. But certainly make sure that they hear the shofar. They've got to hear the shofar as well. The children should hear it. And so in whatever form the shofar is being blown, make sure that a part of their program is attending the shofar blowing. Now, a timetable. Don't sleep the day away. Make sure that there is a strict, well, not so strict, sort of strict, vague, somewhat timetable. It can't just be that whatever, we'll get up whenever and we'll do whatever and we'll see how it goes. There needs to be a sense of timetable on Rosh Hashanah. And the reason I say that is because at this time in our lockdown state, there is a tendency to sort of throw the clock away as much as possible, certainly on Shabbos, Yom Tov, weekend, where we don't have to rush to Zoom meetings and Zoom classes and all these various things. And so it is easier to just sort of sleep a lot of the day away. And while that's understandable that we have that opportunity on Rosh Hashanah, it's not the thing. It's not the thing to oversleep on Rosh Hashanah. In fact, there's a saying of the Kabbalists that every minute of Rosh Hashanah is so precious that if you sleep in on Rosh Hashanah, you're going to have a sleepy year. You're setting the tone for the entire year on Rosh Hashanah. And so by sleeping in, you're sort of preordaining like a bit of a schluffy type of year, which we don't want. We've had enough of that. So it doesn't mean you need to get up, the crack of dawn, but I would say the morning service should be in the morning. And so I said here, try and start by 9 a.m. It's an approximation. The sages say that the correct time to say the Shema is 9 a.m. or earlier for most of the time. There are different times of the year, but this time of year, 9 a.m. is around the latest time to say the Shema. And so I think that if we would all aim that around 9 a.m. we're starting our service, that would be appropriate, because that way we're all on a little bit of a same schedule. Not exactly the same. It's not exactly, but it's approximate. So if you know that you're starting your service around 9, and so too all of the Jews around town who are doing their services are all starting around the same time, there's a sense that we're united, even if we're not in space, in one space, but we're united in time. We're all doing it together. And there is such a thing in halacha and Jewish law that says that when you cannot attend services, try and pray at the time that services would be. And that way you are connecting with community. So make it in the morning service. And you're going to have to time it with the shofar as well, because depending on when the shofar blowings are going to be taking place, you're going to have to time your service. So again, we don't know exactly what the details are of when shofar blowings will be. They will most likely be during the course of the day at different times in different places. So part of your schedule will be around hearing the shofar, because again, that's the most important mitzvah of the day, and should be done as soon as is possible in the day. So your prayer timetable will be somewhat determined by that. And the final moment, the final element here of your service is the space. You're the janitor too, which means you have to set up the shul. You know, you take it for granted when you walk into shul that the chairs are there, that the books are there, that it's clean and it's ready. When you have to do it yourself, so then you realize actually this takes a bit of work, and your home as well is your prayer space. And so you need to prepare the space to be fitting for prayer. According to Jewish law, you're not supposed to pray in a place that is dirty or unpleasant. And so again, these days some of us may have become a little bit lazy with keeping the house, not for Rosh Hashanah, not for prayer. We have to make sure that it's neat, it's presentable for ourselves, to give ourselves a certain dignity. And I think it's an important thing, which I'm sure most of us do it anyway, but just worth mentioning that it's important to create a holy space for your prayers. But more than that, you need to find the right spot for your prayers. Your home is now the temple for Rosh Hashanah. And so you need to find the right spot in your house that is your prayer spot. Prayer should not be done just haphazardly wherever I happen to be. I'll just pray. Set aside, and this is, I think, a good idea for all year round, that we say prayers at home now. And so we should have a spot in the house. This is our prayer spot, whether it's a certain room in the house or a corner of the house or a particular table or chair or just a position. Not all of us have a big house that we can say that's our prayer room and this is our dining room, this is our playroom. Even if you live in a one-room house, but make a spot, a certain position where when the table is here, the chair is put there, this is my prayer space, this is my shul. And that serves to delineate, to give a certain specialness and power to that space. I think it's important to have that. And when I say your home is the temple, you know, one of the interesting practices on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is that we have a custom to bow down to the floor, on our knees with face down to the floor. This is something that is only done on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It used to be done in the temple in Jerusalem. They used to bow regularly as a part of the service. But since the temple's destruction, bowing down to the floor was not done except for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The only time we bow to the floor is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And the reason why we don't usually bow, we only did it in the temple, is because the bowing to the floor represents completely nullifying yourself in front of the infinity of God. When you were in the temple in Jerusalem, you felt that infinity, you felt that presence, and so you automatically bowed. It was like a natural thing to bow to the floor because there was a revelation of the divine in the temple. Since the destruction of the temple, that revelation has become hidden, is no longer with us. And so we don't bow all the way. We bow our heads in prayer, but we don't bow to the floor, except on the high holy days. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur we do, because on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that holiness, the holiness of the temple, actually radiates through the shul, wherever we are in the world. And so we could be far away from the temple, but you actually have that holiness come to you in shul on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So we bow down all the way. Interestingly, when you're home praying on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you bow as well. You do that bowing as well. You bow down to the floor, which means that the holiness of the temple in Jerusalem, which usually extends itself to the shul on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur only, this year is coming to you into your home. Your home is becoming that holy space. And so that it's a part of the prayers, and in the Machzor, it gives you the instructions of where to do this special bowing. And I would say, try to make sure that this is a part of your prayer service. Even if you're doing the minimal, try and make sure you do the bowing. Have the experience of being in your home in your living room, in your little space that you've created, doing your service where you're the chazan and you're the rabbi and the janitor, that you do the bowing on the floor, bringing that presence of holiness to your home. It's a unique experience that I don't know if hopefully we won't have to do it again next year. So make sure you do that as well. Just a little interesting point that this is the Hobart Synagogue. It's the oldest standing shul in Australia, second oldest built. There was one in Sydney before this one, but I was actually there a few years ago, and I was taken by the quote that is here in the middle of over the front door, and I've got it here in a little slightly larger. It says a quote from the Torah on Hobart Synagogue, which was built by convicts and ex-convicts in the 1800s. It says, which is a verse from the Torah that says, in any place that my name is mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. Where God says, wherever my name is mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. And I remember when I visited Hobart, seeing those lines and thinking that these people were on the edge of the world. Not only had they been sent to Australia, which was so far from where they had come from, but they were even sent further than Australia, to Tasmania. And in Tasmania, the Jews who were there as convicts, and some of them had become freed as well, built a shul, a little sanctuary for them to create a space of holiness. And the verse that they chose to put in the front of the shul was that in every place that you mention my name, wherever you mention my name, I will come and bless you. And I was so taken and moved by that thought that they realized, they were conscious that we're so far from what was then civilization, what was then Jewish community. They were so disconnected, and yet they knew that God comes and blesses you even when you're far away, even when you're so seemingly disconnected. You're never disconnected. And so I thought of that verse this year, because that's what we're doing. We are creating the divine presence wherever we are, and we're ready for that. We are ready and capable to do this. That God himself has appointed you as the rabbis, the chazan, the kids counselor, the janitor for these high holidays. He believes you can do it, and he's right. You can do it. All of the resources that I mentioned earlier will be given to you to help you do that. But the main thing is to believe that you can create something powerful and special. I personally, when I go to the high holidays, my hope is that at some point during the prayers, I'm going to feel that connection of the divine presence and that commitment, recommitting myself to God. And out of all the hours of prayers, hopefully there'll be that one moment. And this year is no different. That's how I suggest you go into the Yontiv saying, we need to find that one moment. And that moment is a very personal, internal moment. It's not so much about the surroundings, but about what's going on inside of you. And we have the power to make that happen and to create it in our own home.